Imagine the most armored empire in human history. A nation that spends nearly $900 billion a year on war toys. We're talking about satellites that can see the color of your eyes from space, drones that fire with surgical precision, and a navy that on its own could sink all the countries of the world combined. Now, imagine that all that brute force is completely useless, that the enemy is not a country with a flag, but a 1,000-headed hydra that is already installed in the arteries of your city, and that you cannot attack directly. Today we are going to analyze the most disturbing scenario ever seen. A nightmare that no Pentagon general would want to imagine. What would happen if all the mafias, triads, and cartels on the planet decided to stop competing and united to dismantle the United States? We are not here to watch a cheap action movie. Today, we are going to dissect how bizarre chaos, depravity, and coordinated corruption could bring the superpower to its knees without firing a single nuclear missile. The first great obstacle to defending itself is that the United States is designed to fight against armies, not against ghosts. If a nation launches a missile at it, the radar detects it and the counterattack is immediate. But what do you do when the attack comes in the form of a toy container that hides enough poison to kill 3 entire states? The operation would not begin with an invasion of the coasts, but with what we call logistical metastasis. The drug cartels, in alliance with the port mafias of Europe and the Asian triads, already control the secret entry routes into the United States. And they don't need war submarines. They already have their own fiberglass narco subs that pass below the radar, moving not only drugs, but something much darker: sabotage technology and biological assets of mass destruction. Here comes the first disturbing fact that will make you question the security of your own neighborhood. While you sleep, there is a market in the deepest corners of the internet, deep web level, where vulnerabilities of critical American infrastructure are auctioned. We're talking about access codes to water treatment plants and electrical grids. That, in the wrong hands, would be catastrophic. Imagine that the global mafias coordinated an attack. On the first day of the war, we wouldn't see explosions, but silence. Imagine that the water supply of cities like Washington D.C. or New York is contaminated with chemical analogs of fentanyl or neurotoxic agents manufactured in clandestine laboratories in the Colombian jungle or China. It's chilling. There would be no soldiers to shoot at. We would only see millions of people suffering seizures in their living rooms while hospitals collapse in the first 3 hours. It would be a cheap, efficient, and bizarre attack. But the physical attack is only the smokescreen. The true weapon of mass destruction of the mafias is the theater of horror. In modern warfare, the one who controls the narrative wins, and no one is more expert in visual terror than the Mexican cartels or the Russian mafia's snuff networks. To destroy a superpower, you need to break the mind of its population. We would see the start of executions broadcast in real time through every hacked social network. We're not talking about simple murders. We're talking about the most extreme depravity. Narco-Satanism rituals, where human remains are used to consecrate territories, or the use of living victims as public warnings. The objective is to create a state of collective psychosis where the average citizen is so afraid to leave their house that the economy grinds to a halt. When fear is total, the law ceases to exist. Let's analyze now the logistics of internal sabotage. The United States has a weakness that the mafias know perfectly: its total dependence on technology and credit. Eastern European cybercriminal organizations under this global pact wouldn't steal money. They would simply erase the databases of the main banks. Imagine waking up and your bank account is at zero. The record of your property doesn't exist, and your digital identity has been stolen. In 48 hours, the average American citizen, accustomed to extreme comfort, becomes a hunter. We would see people fighting to the death for a bag of rice at a Walmart, while the mafias watch from the shadows. They don't need to occupy the White House if they can make the people burn their own cities out of hunger. It's the use of social cannibalism as a war strategy, but taken to another level. And here's where the plot becomes truly bizarre and disturbing. In the lowest levels of criminal depravity, there is organ trafficking and human exploitation on a scale that the normal mind cannot process. In a collapse scenario, the mafias would establish collection zones in abandoned suburbs. We would see clandestine clinics operating in shopping mall basements, where the logistics of butchery becomes the primary currency of exchange. This absolute dehumanization is something the average soldier is not trained for. You may know how to fire a rifle, but how do you maintain your sanity when the enemy uses chained people as human shields or as living bombs? Morality is a luxury the United States would lose in the first week. Let's talk about firepower. Although the army has tanks, the mafias have corrupt infiltration. The United States is a country where money talks, and the mafias have more liquidity than many Silicon Valley corporations. The strategic plan is not to defeat the police, it's to buy them. We would see entire local police departments receiving envelopes with amounts of money that would make any officer question their loyalty to the state. The judicial system would be paralyzed because judges would receive photos of their children at school, along with a note that says silver or lead. It's a low-intensity war where the state is left without eyes and without hands. Intelligence would fail because the informants themselves would be double agents paid by the Italian mafia or the Yakuza. But there is a factor that almost no one mentions, and it is the prison system. The United States has more than 2 million people behind bars, many of them linked to fierce gangs like MS-13 or prison brotherhoods. In this scenario, the global mafias would activate the internal bomb. Through the use of commercial drones, they would introduce high-powered weapons into the yards of the most dangerous prisons in the country. We would see coordinated riots in 50 states at the same time. Imagine thousands of the most violent criminals on the planet escaping simultaneously, armed with assault rifles and urban guerrilla tactics, just when the National Guard is busy trying to contain food riots. The country would be flooded with predators in a matter of minutes, creating a battlefront that has no firing line, because the battlefront is every corner of every city. Investigating the darkest aspects of this topic, you find street-level chemical warfare. The cartels have experimented with the use of scopolamine, also known as devil's breath, a drug that nullifies human will. Imagine that agents of these mafias managed to infiltrate the ventilation systems of military command centers or power plants. We wouldn't see a battle. We would see soldiers and technicians walking like zombies, handing over the keys to the country without putting up resistance. It is a tactic used in the lowest levels of crime in South America, but applied on a national scale. It's bizarre, it's effective, and it's deeply disturbing because it nullifies the individual's ability to fight without killing them. However, tactical reality forces us to see the other side of the coin. Why hasn't this happened yet? Because the United States, when it feels cornered, has a response that is just as bizarre and violent. If the state detects that the infection is total, it would activate internal cleansing protocols that would make the cartels look like amateurs. We would see the use of government death squads operating under martial law, eliminating any suspect without trial. Surveillance technology would become totalitarian. Every movement, every message, and every digital thought would be analyzed by military artificial intelligences. The result would not be a victory for the mafias, but the transformation of the United States into a dark fortress where freedom dies so that order survives. The logistical conclusion is bitter. The world's mafias and cartels have the power to destroy the social, economic, and moral structure of the United States. They don't need to win a battle in the field. They only need fear to be greater than trust in institutions. The empire's weakness is not its borders, but its own people, their addiction to consumption, and their psychological fragility in the face of pure horror. The war would not be won with flags, but with the control of vices and the exploitation of human depravity in its most primitive state. It is a lesson in dirty realism. You can have the best shield in the world, but it's useless if the enemy was already born inside your own body. Now I ask you, seeing this scenario where the logic of dirty money and the terror of the deep web surpass nuclear missiles, do you think the United States is already living the initial stages of this silent destruction? Or do you think the state monster is too big to be devoured by these parasites? I'll read you in the comments.